With some serious news at the United Nations, where we are hearing from the president of the Palestinian Authority, that's Mahmoud Abbas. This year, he had to do it remotely after the U.S. revoked visas for several Palestinian groups on national security grounds. It comes as more and more countries express support for a Palestinian state. In his remarks, Abbas slammed Israel for its actions in Gaza, but also rejected Hamas's actions on October 7th. Listen.
We have affirmed, and we will continue to affirm, that the Gaza Strip is an integral part of the state of Palestine, and that we are ready to bear full responsibility for governance and security there. Hamas will not have a role to play in governance.
All right, I want to bring in CBS News intelligence and national security reporter Olivia Gazis. So this is really interesting, Olivia. As more and more countries push to recognize Palestinian statehood, it's unclear what kind of role Abbas would play. What are his goals in today's speech?
Sure. Well, you just heard him wrap up at the General Assembly, Vlad, and he did a few notable things. Predictable condemnation of Israeli settlements in the West Bank, but a notable condemnation of the October 7th attacks and an insistence that Hamas will have no role in governing Gaza post-conflict. Now, that has been an insistence across the board. Nobody believes that Hamas should have a governing role. But the alternative that the Palestinian Authority presents has also been rejected outright by Israel. The United States does not believe that it has the authority, the credibility to be a governing force. It was an integral part of President Macron and Saudi Crown Prince's proposal to reinvigorate the discussion surrounding a two-state solution, that the Palestinian Authority have a key role in governance in Gaza, that it be revitalized, that it be reformed. It's notable that Mahmoud Abbas is 88 years old. There needs to be fresh leadership, they say. But all of those considerations are somewhat moot because Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has rejected a role for the PA in Gaza outright. So it's a bit pushing on a closed door here, Vlad.
So, as you know, we're going to hear from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tomorrow, who has said granting a Palestinian state rewards Hamas. So what can we expect in his speech? I recall, Olivia, as you do, in years past, Netanyahu has gone before the United Nations and talked about the dire threat that Iran poses to Israel's security. But that was before October 7th.
Absolutely. He usually brings fiery rhetoric, sometimes some visual aids to his speeches here at the UN. We're expecting a lot of brimstone tomorrow, especially as these waves of recognition by a number of Western states to recognize a Palestinian state has triggered, as you said, condemnation from him, saying that it is a reward for Hamas. He's vowed an Israeli response once he returns from the General Assembly to Israel. We don't know what that is. There has been speculation that it would be a wholesale annexation of the West Bank, as has been pushed for by some hardline Israeli politicians. We know that the U.S. has opposed that, at least in its discussions with Arab and Muslim leaders. Yesterday, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff confirmed that he had delivered a proposal from the Trump administration to Muslim and Arab leaders about a 21-point plan meant to resolve the conflict in Gaza. Let's listen to what he said.
I think it addresses Israeli concerns and as well the concerns of all the neighbors in the region, and we're hopeful and I might say even confident that in the coming days we'll be able to announce some sort of breakthrough.
So you hear there he's expressing not only optimism but confidence. They apparently got an enthusiastic response from the leaders they met with, according to the White House. We don't have a ton of details about the plan, but we do know that it includes the release of all hostages and a continued dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians.
All right, we'll be watching. Olivia, thank you very much, my friend. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Vlad.
All right, for more on the issue of a two-state solution, I want to bring in Natan Sachs. He's a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute. Good to have you, sir. Appreciate it. So, as you know, Prime Minister Netanyahu has previously stated that a Palestinian state will, quote, not happen. But there is this new international pressure from allies of Israel and the United States. Will that likely change the way he sees that? And how much of his thinking around this subject is due in part to the very right-wing members of his own party that essentially keep him in power?
Netanyahu is caught between a few different pressure points, and the international pressure has certainly grown dramatically. The wave of recognition by some very friendly states as well makes the issue of two states suddenly on the table again, but it's on the diplomatic table. And there's two big caveats to that. The first is that the United States does not use that language. And when Israelis, and Netanyahu included, look at the world, they see more than half of it being the United States and everything else being the remaining part. And so as a result, what Trump says to Netanyahu really matters much more than the others. The second point you raised well is that the Israeli politics post-October 7th have moved dramatically to the right. The idea of a Palestinian state is extremely unpopular. It's a non-starter. Even the left wing in Israel, which has traditionally been very much in favor of it, doesn't use that language right now. So this kind of wave of recognition, it puts a lot of pressure on Netanyahu. It certainly brings the issue back, and in the midterm perhaps could have some influence. In the short term, Netanyahu is not about to turn around and suddenly change his life's mission and accept a two-state solution or a Palestinian state, nor is the Israeli public anywhere close to that, whereas in the past it was. Post-October 7th, it is not.
Do you believe then, because if the Israeli left is no longer, and as you point out, and as someone who has covered the conflict from Jerusalem when I was at a previous network, as you point out, in the past, the left has been more supportive of at least some kind of a two-state solution. But if Hamas would release the remaining hostages, both dead and alive, would that somehow change the calculus? If they came to the table with something that everybody has been calling for, to release the hostages, and only then Prime Minister Netanyahu believes can a really serious discussion begin about a path forward that allows both sides to live in dignity. Do you think that that would change the equation?
I think it would change a lot. If Hamas accepted two central points that we heard Abbas say, but we've also heard from the New York Declaration that many different countries, led by the Saudis and the French, put forward. If they would accept releasing the hostages, but also handing over their weapons and governance of the Gaza Strip, the equation changes dramatically. Then the war is over, and the beginning of a serious conversation of what the future for Gaza can look like, and I think eventually also what a political resolution of the conflict would look like. It's not that a Palestinian state is going to emerge in the next year. That the Palestinian Authority is not ready for it, and it's not possible. But we can get on a path for a very different reality that would change the catastrophe that we're seeing inside Gaza, would allow Israelis to start to heal and rebuild from a very long, very difficult war, and would allow both sides to move past these enormous traumas that they've experienced and are still experiencing. And the release of the hostages is huge for the Israeli psyche, and of course the war for the Palestinians.
And Natan, let me just ask you briefly about Mahmoud Abbas, because we just heard this morning from our correspondent, Olivia Gazis, he's 88 years old. He's been there forever. I mean, even people in the West Bank, I'm sure, just based on my own reporting at the time, had grown tired and weary, some accusing the Palestinian Authority of being corrupt. If there were a change at the leadership there, someone younger, someone with perhaps a different view to a path forward than Abbas, much like Bibi, who is stuck with the right wing of his party, if somehow the Palestinian Authority could not rid itself, but somehow bring someone else into the leadership there, would that change things?
It might. We have a sort of perfect storm of difficult leadership on all sides. If Netanyahu were replaced in elections, which are due in about 13 months in Israel, if Abbas were replaced in the Palestinian Authority, then there would be a chance. But the big question, of course, is who replaces them. In Israel, the likely replacement would be very different, and I think much better for both Israelis and Palestinians, but it would not open the door for a Palestinian state in the short term. It could open the door for reconstruction, for an end of the war. On the Palestinian Authority side, the lack of legitimacy of the Palestinian Authority and of Abbas and of his rule are profound. He has very little support among his own people, as you said well, and as you know well from being there. The perception is that they're very corrupt and incapable of leading their national movement. Who replaces him is the question. Is it someone who lifts the mantle of a free Palestine from the river to the sea, or is it someone who lifts the mantle of a Palestinian state living side by side with Israel? And if it's the latter, and if we see change in Israel, we could see movement forward. But we really should calibrate our expectations. The situation right now is so dire, so horrific, that any change forward would be extremely positive. But that change is not going to be a Palestinian state any minute now. It will be maybe a path towards real independence, real political conflict resolution between the parties, but it will take a long time if there is goodwill on both sides and good diplomacy, good leadership by the United States. Those are a lot of ifs, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, but I like what you say, Natan, which is that for those people who are suffering both in Gaza and for those families who are still awaiting word on their loved ones that are still being held hostage by Hamas, any step forward would be welcome. All right, Natan Sachs, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your insight.
Thank you, Vlad.